jig go.
Just want to start today with a trigger warning disclaimer. This podcast contains descriptions of death and drowning. Hi, I'm Katie Carpenter.
I'm Terry Kovanitz.
We apologize for any and all mistakes today as we begin this episode of Titanic Transcripts.
Harold Bride has been recalled. Mr. Bride, do you know whether the operator on the Frankfurt understood the English language?
There was no necessity for him to understand the English language, sir.
Because this call
Was an international call.
And CQD means the same in the German language and the French language and the English language?
Yes, sir.
And is the international code signal of distress?
Yes, sir.
Under the Berlin Convention?
I cannot say that, sir.
Under the regulations of the Marconi Company?
It is recognized by all ships operators as being a signal of distress.
Mr. Bride, I want this record to be as complete as possible, and I desire to know why, after a message was received from the Frankfurt asking what is the matter, you did not reply, "We are sinking and the lives of our passengers and crew are in danger."
Well, you see, it takes a certain amount of time to transmit that information, sir. If the man had understood properly, as he ought to have, CQD would have been sufficient, sir. CQD is the whole thing in a nutshell, you see.
Yes, but it did not seem to move him.
Well, he did not know his business. That is all, sir.
But in such an emergency, do you not think that a more detailed statement might have been sent? Take, for instance, the message from the Titanic to the Carpathia, that the boiler rooms were filling with water and the ship sinking. That could have been sent with perfect propriety to a boat that was in proximity, could it not?
No, sir. I do not think it could have been under the circumstances.
Do you mean to say that the regulations under which you operate are such that in a situation of this character, you have such discretionary power that you may dismiss an inquiry of that character?
You use your common sense.
Without further word?
You use your common sense, and the man on the Frankfurt apparently was not using his at the time.
I know, but the theory upon which you were anchored was that the Frankfurt was closer to you than any other ship.
The Frankfurt was the first one. We had not got the position. We could not say he was nearer. The signals were stronger.
Now, Mr. Bride, I would like to ask you whether your dismissing the somewhat tardy inquiry of the Frankfurt was due to the fact that you were in constant communication with the Carpathia. Understand me?
Well, it appeared to Mr. Phillips and me, sir, that the Carpathia was the only thing we could hope for at the time we told the Frankfurt to keep out of it.
In other words, you held on to a certainty rather than an uncertainty?
Yes, sir.
The result of your communications with the Carpathia were such as led you to believe that the operator of the Carpathia and the officers of that ship understood fully your position and the danger you were in?
Yes, sir.
And were coming toward you at full speed?
Yes, sir.
In that situation, if the Frankfurt had been 20 miles nearer the Titanic than the Carpathia, would you still have thought, from what you knew of the ship's condition, that it was wise to confine your communications to the Carpathia?
Had we known the Frankfurt's position, having already got the Carpathia's position, we should have used our judgment, and had the Frankfurt been any reasonable distance nearer, we should have informed the Frankfurt of the whole business and repeated each word we sent to him about a dozen times, to make sure he got it.
Her position, however, was an object of some speculation.
Yes, sir.
And your only reason for thinking the Frankfurt was nearer, if I understood you, was because of the strength of this wireless current?
Yes, sir.
And the fact that it first responded?
No, sir.
The strength of the current?
Yes, sir.
I want you to tell, in order that this record may contain it, just how you distinguish between the velocities of currents in wireless telegraphy, the strength of the signals.
When a ship is working wireless, there is no trouble whatever in reading her signals. You can read the signals through one telephone. When you have one telephone off, you can read them through one telephone. When a ship gets 100 miles off, you have to have both telephones on and devote your attention to it. And as the ship gets farther and farther away, the difficulty in reading the signals increases and the strength of the signals decreases.
Decreases?
Yes, sir.
That would depend somewhat on the equipment or apparatus?
Yes, sir, certainly.
Which the Frankfurt was equipped?
Certainly.
Do you know anything about the character of the wireless apparatus on the Frankfurt?
No, sir.
Do you know what company installed that service?
No, sir.
You do not know whether it was the Marconi company or not?
No, sir.
Mr. Marconi, do you know how the Frankfurt is equipped?
The Frankfurt is, I believe, a ship belonging to the North German Lloyd. She is equipped by a German company called the De Bed Company. It means a lot of things in German, each letter, which I will not go into, but of which I am a director.
You are a director in the German company?
Yes.
And you are familiar with the wireless equipment or apparatus?
I am not familiar with the wireless equipment of that particular ship.
So that you would be unable to make a comparative statement, to make a comparison between the equipment or apparatus on the Carpathia and the apparatus on the Frankfurt.
I would be unable, sir, to do it.
Would the fact that the Frankfurt is equipped with an apparatus of German type in any way lessen their interest in calls made through the Marconi machine or apparatus?
No, because it is a Marconi apparatus. It is made in Germany, but it is made under my patents, under an arrangement which we have with the German interests.
Let me ask you, are the regulations of Germany with reference to the operation and use of wireless telegraphy in perfect harmony with the Berlin Convention?
Absolutely. They were enacted at Berlin, and most of them were inspired by the German government.
Are these calls that are recognized prescribed in the Berlin Convention?
The call of the Berlin Convention, which has only been recently introduced, is this SOS call, but the Marconi companies have used and use the CQD call. The Frankfurt, which was equipped with wireless, belonged to one of what I may call the Marconi companies because I would not be a director of the company if I was not associated with it.
Would you think that any confusion would arise growing out of this international arrangement of signal with the Marconi signal?
No, I should state that the international signal is really less known than the Marconi signal.
So that the CQD call must have been understood in its full significance by the Frankfurt operator.
I have got absolutely no doubt as to that.
And under the regulations, would that be sufficient?
That would be sufficient.
To bring relief?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bride, I want to know this before I get away from it. I want to know whether the communications between the Titanic and the Carpathia were not also within the radius of the Frankfurt. I would like to know whether these communications could have been picked up by the Frankfurt.
Certainly they could have been.
Had the operator on the Frankfurt showed vigilance.
Certainly. He ought to have heard every word that passed between us.
When you told him to keep out, you were guarding against that thing?
We were guarding against his interfering with other communications which we might establish, and we had already established.
How could that interfere with you?
Because you cannot read two ships at once.
Have you any reason to believe that the signals given by the Titanic to the Carpathia and the replies of the Carpathia or the Olympic were received by the Frankfurt?
No, sir.
You have no reason to assume that that was the case.
I could not tell. If he was listening, he would hear them. If he was not listening, he could not hear them.
No messages came involved or otherwise that would indicate that the Frankfurt had gotten any other information than the information you first gave her?
No, sir.
In order that the record may contain the answer, I would like to know whether it would have taken any longer or any more effort for you to have sent the same message to the Frankfurt that was sent to the Carpathia when you realized that you were in imminent danger. Is there any code signal for fool?
No, sir.
It would have taken no more time to appraise the Frankfurt of your perilous condition, growing more so all the time since the CQD call.
He did not acknowledge the receipt of that when we told him he was a fool and told him to keep out.
As a matter of fact, it would not have taken any more time to say we are sinking than it would have taken to tell him you are a fool.
I assume Mr. Phillips thought that if he did not get our first CQD, which was sent slowly and carefully by Mr. Phillips, he would not get anything else.
Do you think he understood your message that he was a fool?
I doubt it. I think it was sent too fast for him.
I gather from what you say that you have not much confidence in the ability of the operator on the Frankfurt.
There ought to have been no question raised, sir, as to what he should have done as to our CQD call.
Mr. Bride, you remain with Mr. Phillips at the apparatus how long?
All the time.
After the boilers were submerged, after the customary power had been submerged, did you have reserve power on the Titanic?
The customary power was not submerged.
Not submerged?
No, sir, not submerged.
At no time?
Not to my knowledge.
Was there a reserve power source?
There was a reserve power on the top deck.
But you had no occasion to use it?
The motor and alternator that was working with our wireless set were running when we left the cabin, 10 minutes before the ship went down.
Did you continue to send messages or Mr. Phillips up to the time you left the cabin?
When we had finished with the Frankfurt, and we had thoroughly informed the Carpathia of our position, Mr. Phillips again went out to look and see how things were going outside. I tried to establish a communication with the Baltic, and it was not very satisfactory, and I judged myself, from the strength of her signals, that she was too far away to do any good, and it was not worth taking any trouble. And I told her we were sinking fast, and there was no hope of saving the ship.
Told who?
The Baltic.
Did Mr. Phillips return from the deck?
Yes, sir.
To the room?
Yes, sir.
What did he say to you then?
He told us he thought it was time we put on our lifebelts.
Did you act upon his suggestion?
Yes, sir.
And both of you put on lifebelts?
Yes, sir.
At that time, had all the lifeboats been lowered?
I could not say, sir.
You paid no attention to the lifeboats?
Mr. Phillips told me that things looked very queer outside. Beyond that, I knew nothing.
And how did you interpret the word queer?
The sooner we were out of it, the better.
What did you do then, Mr. Bride?
Mr. Phillips sat down again at the telephone and gave a general call of CQD, but I think that our lamps were running down. We did not get a spark. We could not tell, because the spark of our wireless was in an enclosed room. We could not hear at any time whether it was sparking.
When Mr. Phillips sat down to the instrument, did he have a life preserver on? And did you put on one?
Yes, sir.
And did you put one on?
Yes, sir.
Immediately?
Yes, sir.
But after he had put the life preserver on, he tried and succeeded, as I understand you, in sending a last message, and that message was CQD and anything else?
General CQD, MGY, waiting for someone to answer.
What did you do then, Mr. Bride?
On Mr. Phillips' request, I started to gather up his spare money and put on another coat, and made general preparations for leaving the ship.
How did you expect to leave the ship?
Well, we had to wait until the captain told us first.
You had to wait until the captain told you?
Yes, sir. He came along in a very short period afterwards and told us we had better look out for ourselves.
You waited until the captain told you that you could leave the ship?
Yes, sir.
And how long was that before the ship disappeared?
I should say it was just about a quarter of an hour.
About 15 minutes?
About 15 minutes.
And the captain said you had better take care of yourselves?
Yes, sir.
Did he indicate what he was going to do?
No, sir.
Where was he when he said this?
He came around to the cabin to tell us.
He came around to the cabin?
Yes, sir.
Was there anyone else on the deck?
Oh, there were other people on the deck.
With you?
Yes, they were running around all over the place.
How running around?
Several people looking for life belts and looking for refreshments.
I want to locate exactly the position of this operating room of yours with reference to the boat deck or upper deck. Is it at the rear of the A or B deck?
I believe on the Titanic, sir, the boat deck was called A deck. There was no deck above that, with the exception of a little deck which covered the roofs of the houses that were on A deck.
These people that you say were running around these decks, all of them?
The officers' quarters were situated together with the Marconi cabin, the officers' rooms, and other places, and the people running around through these cabins. We had a woman in our cabin who had fainted.
A woman in your cabin who had fainted?
And we were giving her a glass of water there in a chair. We set her down in a chair, which she wanted badly, and then her husband took her away again.
You gave her a glass of water and revived her, and her husband took her away?
Yes, sir.
Did they have on life preservers?
Yes, sir.
But some of these passengers or person were without life belt at the time and were looking for them?
Yes, sir.
You and your assistant had on life belts. And after this final message, CQD and MGY, that was the last you saw of the wireless apparatus?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any lifeboat after that?
No, sir.
Do you know whether there was any on the ship at the time?
There were no big lifeboats on the ship at that time. There was a collapsible boat on top of the deck at the side of the forward funnel.
You mean over the officers' quarters?
Over the officer's cabin, sir.
Do you know what was done with that?
Yes, sir.
What was done with it?
It was pushed over onto the boat deck.
What was done then with it?
It went over the side.
You never saw it?
Well, yes, I went over with it. He says it went over the side.
I understand what the second officer said about it. I want to know whether you saw it again.
Yes, sir. It went over the side of the ship. It was washed off by a wave.
It was washed over the side of the ship by a wave.
Yes, sir.
And fell into the water.
Yes, sir.
Bottom side upward.
Yes, sir.
And how far were you from the water when you saw this boat fall?
I was in the boat.
You were in the boat.
Yes, sir.
It fell the bottom side upward.
Yes, sir.
What became of you?
I was inside the boat.
You were under the boat?
Yes.
How long did you remain in the boat?
That I could not tell you.
About how long?
It seemed a lifetime to me, really.
I understand, but I would like to know, if possible, if at any time you got on top of the boat.
Well, I got on top of the boat eventually.
Eventually?
Yes, sir.
Before anyone else got on top of it?
No, sir.
Who was on top of the boat when you got on?
There was a big crowd on top when I got on. I had to get away from under the bottom.
You remained under the boat how long?
I should say about 3/4 of an hour or a half.
Was there breathing space under the boat when it was turned over in that way?
Yes, sir.
So that you got away from it as quickly as you could?
Yes, sir.
You got out free from it, or did you cling to it, pulling yourself up to the side?
I freed myself from it and then cleared out of it.
How did you get back to it then?
I swam back eventually.
Which side of the boat was that on, port or starboard?
On the port side of the Titanic.
Did you hear the second officer yesterday say that the boat came around from the starboard to the port side?
I was not here yesterday.
You cannot say as to that?
It went straight over the port side, sir.
It went straight over the port side.
It was on the port side of the forward funnel. We pushed it to the port side of the boat deck, and it went over the port side of the Titanic.
Did it at any time get onto the starboard side?
Not to my knowledge.
You say that there was a number of people on the boat, on the bottom of the boat that was bottom up when you got there.
Yes.
Do you know any of them?
I heard afterwards that the senior operator was on board.
Mr. Phillips?
Mr. Phillips.
Was on the boat.
Yes, I heard so afterwards.
He did not survive, however?
He did not survive.
Do you know whether he died going from the Titanic to the Carpathia?
He died on the way, yes. He died on board the upturned boat.
What became of his body?
As far as I know, it was taken on board the Carpathia and then buried from the Carpathia.
Buried at sea?
Buried from the Carpathia.
Did anyone else die on that boat between the wreck and the Carpathia?
There was a man lying aft that they said was dead when they took him onto the ship's boat.
What did they do with his body?
He was taken on board the Carpathia, as far as I know.
They took his body to the Carpathia?
Yes.
How many people were on that boat?
It was estimated between 30 and 40.
Were there any women on that boat?
No, sir.
How many people were in the boat or on the boat when it fell from the upper deck onto the lower deck?
There was not anybody in it. It was pushed over intentionally.
Was it fastened to the boat davits?
No, sir. It was resting on a proper bed there for it.
How did you get in it?
When it was pushed over to the A deck, we all scrambled down onto the A deck again.
You all scrambled in?
We did not scramble in. We scrambled down onto A deck, and we were going to launch it properly.
Then what happened?
It was washed overboard before we had time to launch it.
The boat was washed over?
Yes.
You then went down with it?
I happened to be nearest it, and I grabbed it.
You grabbed it and went down with it?
Yes, sir.
Did anyone else grab it?
No, sir.
You went down with it alone?
Yes, sir.
It fell in such shape that you were under it?
Yes, sir.
You say there were no women on that boat?
No, sir.
When it reached the Carpathia, or at any other time?
No, sir.
And there were about 35 or 40 people altogether?
Yes, sir.
Do you know any of the people that were on the boat besides Mr. Phillips and yourself?
There was an officer, I believe, on the boat.
An officer?
And there was a passenger. I could not see whether he was first, second, or third.
What kind of a looking man?
I could not say, sir.
Have you learned who it was?
No, sir. I heard him say at the time he was a passenger.
Was it Colonel Gracie?
I could not say. He merely said he was a passenger.
Where did he get on?
I could not say. I was the last man that they invited on board.
Were there others struggling to get on?
Yes, sir.
How many?
Dozens.
Dozens in the water?
Yes, sir.
With life preservers on?
Yes, sir.
Was this one man the only passenger?
I could not say.
Did anyone say to you that anyone else was a passenger?
No, sir. We did not have much to say to each other.
You did not talk to one another?
No, sir.
Do you know whether the other occupants of that boat were officers or seamen or stewards or employees?
I should judge that they were all employees. They were all part of the boat's cruise.
They were all in the water?
They all had been in the water at some time or the other.
They had been in the water at some time when they got onto the upturned boat?
Yes.
When did you last see the captain? When he told you to take care of yourself?
The last I saw the captain, he went overboard from the bridge, sir.
Did you see the Titanic sink?
Yes, sir.
And the captain was at that time on the bridge?
No, sir.
Well, what do you mean by overboard?
He jumped overboard from the bridge. He jumped overboard from the bridge when we were launching the collapsible lifeboat.
I should judge from what you have said that this was about 3 or 4 minutes before the boat sank.
Yes, it wouldn't be just about 5 minutes before the boat sank.
About 5 minutes?
Yes. Yes, sir. The whole of the ship was practically underwater to the forward funnel, and when I saw her go down, the stern came out of the water and she slid down fore and aft.
The captain at no time went over until the vessel sank.
No, sir.
He went with the vessel?
Practically speaking, yes, sir.
I would like to ask you, before I forget it, whether, as this vessel went down, there was much suction there?
No, sir.
There was not?
No, sir.
The fact that so few of the passengers and crew were picked up by the Carpathia with life preservers on would seem to indicate that they were sucked under these waves or this water as the ship disappeared. What is your judgment about that?
I estimate I was within 150 feet of the Titanic. I was swimming when she went down, and I felt practically no suction at all.
Mr. Bride, I appreciate the fact that you are not well. I want to thank you very much for your uncomplaining, kindly attitude. I will not press you any farther today, but I wish you would hold yourself subject to the call of the committee and be ready to respond if we should want you again. May I have this understanding, Mr. Marconi?
All right.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack now.
Yeah, this is very dramatic. Okay, so just poor Mr. Bride.
Yeah.
Also, you can really see some difference between those survivors that were interviewed that were in one of the first lifeboats lowered.
Oh, yes.
And then these guys that were scrambling towards the end. Because so far everyone has said, whoa, they were so quiet, they were so calm. And now, they're running around and
looking for
like you would expect. But...
Well, I think as far as... I just want to talk about the Frankfurt real quick.
Oh, yeah.
I think that he is just trying to protect Phillips.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the guy
Why
died.
bother a
I'm not going
deceased boss?
Say the Frankfurt was right on that. No way. Plus, I was in on that too.
Once, of course we were smack talking him behind his back. Yeah, he could have saved us probably. And I think Senator Smith seems so weird in this one. He seems a little out of character because he's kind of leading a little bit at first.
Well, like he wants to let him off the hook, I think.
Like, oh, did he, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's answering the questions.
Certainty over uncertainty, right?
Yeah, he's like answering the questions when he's asking them.
But then he gets on him about...
But then,
it would have been just as quick to say, we need help.
Which is kind of a good point.
You are a fool.
But I can understand that they were angry. I would do the same thing. I mean...
Yeah, he sounds like he's still angry.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think I would hold that grudge forever.
Oh, and I almost laughed out loud when the senator asked if the Frankfurt guy understood he was a fool. Oh. And Brian's like, probably not. It was too fast for him.
Yeah. And also... It probably wasn't fun to go down with the boat, but just when was the last you saw it? Oh, I was in it.
I know. I'm such a dramatic, unexpected.
And then they're running through the officers' quarters and stuff, and the woman fainted, and then also that they can't and wouldn't leave the ship until the captain tells them. Like, what if the captain is forgetting, made all his rounds but forgot?
Yeah, and we're waiting
to be back. But it does sound like he truly went down with the ship. No life belt on or anything, and just as the ship...
Oh, I don't know. He jumped.
Went under.
He didn't stay rooted to the...
I guess. And then how lucky, though, is Mr. Bride to... If he had to go from underneath and swim far out and come back... to be the last one that they invited on board when he said there were dozens trying to get on.
Oh, that just got me. Oh, my poor gut was a good...
Yeah, because so far, they haven't seen people struggling, or maybe they did see, one deceased body, but it was
But again, like you said, it was the early boats.
Dozens of them are in the water trying to get on this overturned boat. Oh,
and I doubt they just said no, and then the guys in the water were like, oh, never mind.
Oh, it had to be so dramatic.
They had to have been trying to get up. Were they
for sure
shoving them back off or something?
Like a zombie movie.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's just really very real, this one.
There's a lot of imagery he probably had to take with him that really was rough.
Yeah, this one... Ooh.
Yeah, juicy.
Yeah, it was a rough one.
As always, thank you for listening. Please be sure to let us know what you're thinking in the comments or at titanictranscripts@gmail.com. Also be sure to check out our Facebook page, Titanic Transcripts, for more interesting tidbits and general discussion.